I was born on Long Island in New York, and my aunt lived behind us. So we had a fence that had a swinging gate, and so my cousin was born the same year I was, a month apart from me, and she was severely retarded, a word they used back then, developmentally delayed, but I grew up with her. And so she and I were like thrown together and, to play together. And Marianne actually was the first person to teach me to dance because they would put on Diana Ross and she would go around, and I imitated her because she was so free with her movement. And so I grew up with her. And then when I was about 5 or 6, I just remember going out somewhere with her, because I didn't go out in public with her very much. It was mainly at her. And I watched people's looks on their face and fear, and people would move away, and it was back at a time when you really didn't raise your child. You put him in an institute. And so my aunt had bucked that whole thing, and she insisted on keeping her home. And so people weren't exposed to children that had disabilities like that. And even though I was so young, I just remember like looking at people's faces and just being blown away that they were afraid of her. Someone who was my dear comrade. So that was sort of how it started. And then somehow I found my way always like in working with some kind of disability. And so there was a developmental center that I volunteered at. I began volunteering, and it was a cerebral palsy center. And so they had all these people there that had cerebral palsy that basically couldn't voluntarily move their arms or anything. And at that point, they didn't communicate, they couldn't talk. They basically had to be fed. And so there was this one gentleman whose name was Harry, and when I went, that's who I sort of spent most of my time with. And I would talk to him and things. And back then you didn't know how much they understood, or, and so I don't know, I hate to say it, but you almost treated them like, I don't know, a pet, or, like you just didn't, even as a child, I was a teenager, but I didn't kind of give him, I didn't think he really understood. I just didn't give him any accountability for intelligence. And then one day we received all of these boxes, and there was all this equipment. And so we started pulling out all this equipment, and there were these kind of typewriter boards, with alphabet on it, and there was all these different things. And then there was this one thing that was a kind of helmet thing, and it had this long pointer from it. And so I put it on his head, and then I put the keyboard in front of him, and he quickly tapped out, "Hello, Christina." That was a moment. I mean, we just looked into each other's eyes, and at that moment, I felt so stupid because I looked in his eyes. And I finally was like, oh my God, how come I've been missing this? And his eyes just showed that he was present, he was alive, he was intelligent. And anyway, just completely, changed my whole idea about what reality is. And really that reality is never what it is. It's never solid. It's never what we think it is. It's always moving, the reference point. It's always kind of getting bigger. Our world is usually very myopic, and just to keep that in mind. And, we never know what people are going through. We never know how they're feeling. And just to take the time to really stop and look into someone's eyes.